Hi class, Professor Pratt here, bringing you Chapter 3, Culture. First off, what is American culture? Is it just hot dogs, hamburgers, football, baseball, walks in the park, dogs, cats? What is it? Well, the simple answer is yes. But to be more complex and more genuine, American culture is virtually all of it. I always find it funny when people say, you don't have any culture or there is no American culture, because there is. Every single thing is part of culture. For example, what do you do with your shoes when you walk inside the house? Do you take them off at the front door? Do you walk throughout the house with them? Do you have another set of shoes for other people to wear? What age does a kid get to drive? Should they drive? Should they take the bus? All these things are another example of culture. What is love? What is marriage? When should you get married? What age? Should you let your parents decide who you marry? America does have a pretty high divorce rate. Maybe we should let our parents do it. Maybe our culture is wrong on this. Anyways, point is that every country, every place, even different cities within our own country will have a variety of cultural aspects that can then make them feel different than another city. So every place does have its own culture. We just get used to it. Think of everything that you take as normal. Well, that's the norm. It's normal to you and me, but to somebody who's from outside our country or outside our city, that's not normal for them. That's completely different and new, and it takes a lot of getting used to. Having gigantic grocery stores or having Costco's or everyone having their own car or a cell phone, this and that, and so on. All these things play into it. What does success look like? That's almost a personal thing. Does wealth equal success? Or is it wealth plus happiness equal success? For some, it might just be happiness is success. It is basically how you're raised, where you're raised, and at what time in history are you raised. Let me pull up my slideshow here. If you grew up in the 1950s, culture then looked a lot different than it does now. People that were parents then came out of World War II with an appreciation of having families, starting a family, hence the baby boomers. If you go to a different era in American history, there was a time where women could not show a part of their body, and you could argue men too, but with going to the beach, it was customary for women to cover all the way down to their ankles. Anything above their ankles was considered lewd. You see it, and you could go to jail for it. And there were women who were fighting for that freedom to be treated more equal to a man than they were being currently allowed to this was punishable by arrest. That's a pretty big deal. I guess the equivalent today would be going topless. Guys can go topless at the beach. However, women cannot. And if you think about it, that's not really a whole lot of different from the past, where we said it was lewd to show skin on a woman's leg. Now we're talking about just a different body part that we haven't uncovered. Who knows? Maybe that will be the spot at which we draw the line. Or maybe down the road, future generations will say, we are living in prehistoric times and everyone should be able to go naked everywhere. You never know. It's just the way it's going to be as we move through time. But think about other cultures in that aspect too. There are cultures in which women are not allowed to show much of anything. Not hair, not face. It's considered lewd to do otherwise. So, are they any better or worse than we are? No. We are just two different sides of, not even sides, we are two different examples of how a society can choose to live. We could choose to have one large family all in the same house. From the day you're born to the day you die, everyone lives and moves together. You know, grandparents, great-grandparents, your kids, their kids, you're all in one dwelling together. We could do that. Why don't we? Some cultures do tend to pack up families into a house. And you could argue that's putting a lot of life centered around the family. Now, do Americans hate family? No, I wouldn't say so. Then why don't we do it? Another aspect of culture a lot of people don't even think about is language. Language can define how you perceive reality. For example, in English, there are no nouns that are specifically designed to be masculine or feminine. However, taking foreign language, I learned that there are languages, many languages out there, that for some reason decide to put a feminine connotation on a noun, even though a man might use it, or it may have no relation to it at all. Is that an expression of their cultural perception on things? Maybe. Does learning and growing up with that perception, does that help solidify genders into two separate camps? Perhaps. But all these things, and you probably know of some that have nothing to do in English. Like there's no translation for it. And if you want, you can put those in the comments below. But there's no translation for some of these phrases or the meanings of certain phrases. It just wouldn't make sense. You have to have like this long backstory in order to understand it. Like raining cats and dogs. You tell that to someone who just learned English from another country, and they're like, "What? You freaking crazy? I have no idea what you're talking about. Raining cats and dogs. That doesn't make any sense." Point is that language can be a symptom of how that culture perceives the world, or it might even, depending on who we're talking about, it might even be a catalyst which creates the separation of or the differences between genders or different perceptions of the world, depending on who you are and what you are. One of the things you can look for when analyzing a culture is, what does that culture think of as a norm? Short for basically what's normal within that culture. As you look at the United States, what is considered the norm when it comes to the age of getting married, the age of supposedly spending your life with one other person forever? While we might have the highest divorce rate, that's the general idea behind marriage here in America. So it kind of has an asterisk by it. But what are some of the formal laws that have to go with that? Formal meaning that there is some sort of government sanctioned activity or paperwork that needs to get done for it to happen. Now, when it comes to a law that is broken, a good one is a speeding ticket, right? You broke the law of traveling, maybe you're driving 90 in a 75, if there are any 75s around here. But let's say you're going 90. They give you a ticket. That's called a sanction. You're being punished. Been a naughty boy. But sanction doesn't have to mean a negative thing. Sanctions are just something that we do to reinforce a norm. Now, if the cop pulled you over because you were going 75 in a 75, and he pulled you over and said, "You're doing a great job. I don't normally do this, but I got to give you a sanction." and he hands you like some ice cream or a $5 bill or something. Maybe they should do a reverse fine. Somebody else, every time he gets somebody and they have to pay a fine, that fine goes to the person he pulls over that's doing good. That would be nice. A sanction can be a good thing. All it's doing is trying to reinforce those societal norms. Now, when it comes to informal norms, also known as folkways, we can basically assume that this is not part of law. This is just one of those behaviors that people expect. An example would be if you have to pass gas, if you're going to fart. Where is okay to do that? If you're at a restaurant, is it fine for everyone around you to start going? Is it appropriate to burp? In some cultures, burping after a good meal is, in a sense, a compliment to the chef. Like, wow, I really enjoyed that. Hear me roar with my belly. But here in America, it's not so much the case, even though we might do it for fun or whatever with our friends. Another informal norm is anything that people could give you like dirty looks for. Maybe you're yelling outside at the top of your lungs. Maybe you're singing at the top of your lungs outside. There's got to be some people that get kind of annoyed, and they may give you some looks. They may even just flat out tell you to be quiet, or worse. So those things, those sanctions, informal sanctions, do not involve law, and the informal norm itself does not involve the law as well. Mores, on the other hand, is considered extremely disrespectful to the culture, potentially even very illegal. More that is very easy to come up with is someone who is an adult dating or trying to date someone who is a minor. That is considered extremely a big no-no. And if they became sexual, that's even a bigger no-no. That's jail time. That's FBI raiding your house kind of thing. So mores are those things that we take very seriously. And it's not just going to be a simple nasty look. People are going to jump in on it. There's this thought that the United States is a melting pot. Like, where this one culture over here and this one culture over there, they come to the United States and we all just blend into this nice, soupy, cheesy mix, right? Wrong. While there might be some aspects here or there, the United States very much assimilates other people to our way of life, or its way of life. So as you come to the United States, or as anybody comes to the United States, we expect them to act more like us. We don't act like them. One could argue that there's a good reason for this. You might argue from a functionalist point of view, well, we need to be kind of on the same page with everything. How am I supposed to know every single culture that's out there and every single insult that's out there? I might come across somebody who sticking a thumb up in the air is an insult. What am I supposed to do about that? All right, and in those terms of a functional, practical point of view, that makes sense. Now, English-only laws, where people come to the United States, people have argued that we need to have some sort of like English-mandated training or learning, or at least pass a test. The thing is, though, the United States does not formally have a language. We mostly speak English, that's right, but we never put it in writing like the United States official language is English. We don't have that. Mexico has that. The official language is Spanish. So when you go to Mexico and you want to do some legal paperwork, you are the one that has to go find a translator and have it translated. Whereas here in America, if you need to go get some legal paperwork, it's already translated for you. You just ask for the Spanish version or the Korean version, whatever. That's why we don't really have a requirement for English when somebody comes in. We haven't decided to pass a law that says that's a necessity. One could argue it would definitely help out between different cultures if everyone could at least speak to one another. But that is, I would argue, that is probably one of the biggest barriers between different ethnicities, different nationalities, is that if you can't talk, you can't relate. You can't understand the other person, their wants, their desires, their dreams, how much family means to them or not, how much or what is success to them. Instead, that person becomes just another name or another number in a city, and you don't really get to know that person. So there is an argument to be made about everyone sharing one common language. So I understand that. And for me anyway, I am horrible at learning languages. So I can sympathize with anyone who were to come to America and not be able to speak English, because they would, like me, I would just have a horrendous time trying to learn a new language at my age. My age, I'm just so I can't remember. Anyways, there is a difference that I want you to remember between cultural relativism and ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism is thinking that your culture, ethnicity, when we talk about ethnicity, we're talking about culture. Your ethnicity is the center of the universe. That's why we say centric. Ethnocentric, meaning that everybody else is irrelevant or somehow beneath you and your culture. And I would argue that most cultures can be this way. And the United States is not an exception to that. So with that in mind, putting our values that we hold ahead of another country's is very much something that we do quite often and have done quite often in the past. Now, is that the appropriate way to go do things? Honestly, if you're trying to get along with somebody, not really. You don't go to somebody's house and say, you know what? I don't think you're running this house right. I think you should have it cleaner than this. This is not clean enough. You need to get on your hands and your knees and scrub those baseboards. What? You have your wife talking to you that way? Anyways. Point being, why even bring that up in the first place? Why even try to impose your way of doing things if that culture is already perfectly fine doing that? Resentment might even come between nations if one is basically saying, your culture is crap and my culture's better. Become like me. I would resent that if somebody came here to the United States and said our culture was worth nothing compared to theirs. I mean, it automatically puts you on the defensive. Now, if you're going to that place and you want to practice cultural relativism, you basically are thinking, okay, I am an outsider. This is not my culture. When I look at the things they do, I'm not going to judge them based on the way I grew up. They grew up their way. They learned to act a certain way. These things are very important to them. I am not going to say anything that minimizes that. If they ask, I can bring up my culture. By doing such a thing, what you're doing is you're trying to drop all your biases. You're trying to say, hey, to each their own. I'm perfectly fine with them doing this. I'm not going to judge them. And that's it. That's cultural relativism. That's all I wanted to address today in culture, but you can find more information within our text. Please look out for my post about when I'm going to be having our class Zoom meeting if you wish to attend. That should be posted in the forums. Otherwise, I will see you later.